Hello and welcome to the lecture series on Power Electronics 2 course. Today we will be looking into DC to DC converters. This is the first unit of this course, and in this unit we have to study about different type of DC to DC converters. In the previous lecture I told you that DC to DC converter can be categorized into isolated and non-isolated DC to DC converters, and the basic difference lies in the transformer, high frequency transformer that is used in isolated converters, which separates the input and output side magnetically, while this high frequency transformer is not present in non-isolated DC to DC converter. Okay. So let's start. So basically, why is there a need for any converter? This issue I took up in the previous lecture, and I told you that the reason for the converters, the reason why we use converter is that there is a mismatch between the type of supply, power supply that is available to us, and the type of load that we have to feed. So there is a mismatch between the two. Say for example, we have got 230 volts 50 hertz AC supply available in our homes, and we are interested in charging our mobile. I had given this example on previous occasion also. So there need to be a conversion from AC supply to DC supply, and moreover the voltage level at which the charging should go on should be at par with 5 volts. So some converter has to be placed in between the supply and the load to mitigate the otherwise mismatch that exists. Okay, so let me take up one simple case. Say for example, I have got this DC supply available to me in my home, and say this is a 12 volt DC supply. Normally we have a lead acid batteries which are used along with the inverters they come in handy when the power supply is not available, the grid power supply is not available. So consider that battery. So that is a 12 volt battery, and say for example I have a load, and again for simplicity I am assuming that I have got a resistive load. So this resistive load R, okay, say for example it is a 5 ohm load, and again the requirement is that the voltage that is allowed to appear across this resistor is say 6 volts. Okay, although we have got 12 volt voltage supply available to us, a DC supply, and we have a DC load, R load, but the requirement of the load is that it works on 6 volt supply. So what are the options available to us? One of the option is that we use a potential, we use again a resistor and drop 6 volts here, and remaining 6 volts will be dropped here according to Kirchhoff's voltage law. So if I am taking this resistance as 5 ohm, and this is also 5 ohm, then definitely 6 volt will be dropped here, and the remaining 6 volt will be dropped here, because the sum of the two has to be 12 volts. But this is not a feasible option, because what we are basically doing, we are basically dissipating power in form of heat across this resistor which we are adding. Okay, although we are reducing the voltage from 12 volts to 6 volts, but the problem is there is a large dissipation of heat. Almost half of the power will be lost in this resistor, and that will be a useless loss. Okay, loss are itself, they are useless, so that power is lost. So we have to think of some other way by which we can obtain 6 volts here, and the power loss that otherwise is happening here is avoided. So how we can do that? Another way to do it is to use linear regulator. Okay, so we could use some linear regulator here. Okay, linear regulators are nothing but they are switches, but they do not operate in switching mode. Okay, they don't operate in turn on and turn off mode, but they allow a finite voltage to drop across it. Okay, so again in this case also this would lead to power loss. Okay, and this is again not desirable. So what we are left with, we are left with the option that if I am using a switch here, okay, and I am turning this switch on and off after a regular interval of time. Okay, so if I plot the voltage profile, this is the input voltage and this is 12 volts. So when this switch is connected to point A, so this is as good as short circuit, and the entire voltage will appear across the load. So the output voltage would be 12 volts again. And say for some time I allowed that voltage to appear across the load, and after some time, say after T on, I turn off the switch. Okay, I turn off the switch. So now the voltage that will be appearing across the resistor would be 0 volts. I draw it here again, and let it be for say let me call it T by 2 and T. Let the T on period be equal to T by 2, and T is the time period of switching. So for half of the time 12 volt is appearing across the load, and for half of the time no voltage is appearing across the load. And if I try to find out the average voltage that would be appearing across the load, so I can easily find it out. It would be the area of this rectangle. So 12 times T by 2 plus 0 times T by 2 and divided by T. Okay, so this is equal to, this is the average voltage that will appear across the resistor R. So this is equal to 6 volts. So you could see that we are now obtaining a 6 volt across the resistor R, an average voltage of 6 volt across the resistor R, and we can even control this voltage by controlling the time for which the switch is in the on state. Okay, what is the advantage that we are getting in this case? The advantage is that, so for the duration when the switch is connected and 12 volt is appearing across the load, there is no voltage there is no voltage drop appearing across the switch. So V drop across the switch will be equal to 0 volts, and whatever be the current flowing through it, so let me call I current that is flowing through the switch, it would basically be 12 divided by 6 since it is a resistive load. So I would be 12 divided by not 6 by 5. So this much amperes of current would be flowing through the switch, but since voltage is 0 and the product of the two will consequently be 0, so there is no power loss across the switch when the switch is conducting. Similarly, when the switch is off, that means there is an open circuit across the switch, across these two terminals, and no current would be flowing through this in this circuit. In this case also the current would be 0, and whatever be the voltage, voltage would basically be 12 volts, and the product of the two finally will give you, this is for on and this is for off, so off power is also 0. It is very clear from this example that if we are using a switch in place of a resistor or in place of a linear regulator, we can easily achieve our target of obtaining a desired voltage across the load, and at the same time we can have an efficient operation. Okay, I hope it is clear. So let us proceed, and let us see now how we can design our first type of converter, which is the buck converter. Okay, a buck converter has got a switch here, and the ideal form of buck converter is the same thing which I have shown in the previous example. So this is the ideal buck converter. So this is some input voltage VDC, and we would be getting some output voltage, and that output voltage would be less than the input voltage because of the presence of this switch. I will be obtaining an expression also, the relation between V out and VDC after some time. So, but it is quite clear here that the output voltage would be less than the input voltage, because for some of the time the switch is on and for rest of the time the switch is off. So the output voltage would definitely be less than the input voltage. So here we are obtaining what we call buck operation, and we have an ideal buck converter here. Okay, but if you see the waveform of the voltage and consequently the current, say this is the input voltage which is VDC, say, and then we have this output voltage. This waveform is output voltage, while this is VDC and this is 0. And similarly the current that would be flowing would have the same wave shape as that of the output voltage, because it say let us we are considering only an R load. So this would be V out, this is current I out, let me call it I out, and I out would be V out divided by R. So this magnitude would be V out divided by R, while this is 0. So when output voltage is 0, no current is flowing through the resistor. It is actually vice versa. Since there is no current flowing through the output load, so the output voltage is 0. But there is some issue here. The issue is the large fluctuation in the current. You could see here the current is varying from V out by R to 0. So there is a large fluctuation of current, and most of the time we would see that the load demands that the voltage and the current supplied to it should be constant. So if I am talking about DC loads, okay. So, and in some very critical case, the tolerance is very tight. That means current cannot have ripple more than say 0.1% or even less. And similarly, this stringent criteria is for voltage also. So let's focus here first on the current ripple. The current ripple is quite high, V out by R to 0. So this is the difference of the two would give you the current ripple, which is quite high. Okay. How to reduce the current ripple? We know we do have a passive element to help us, and that is the inductor. So the property of inductor is that it do not allow a sudden change in current through it. Okay. So we can use inductor for our purpose, for filtering out the otherwise large ripple that is there in the current. So I have to use this inductor in series with the current, okay, because I have to reduce the ripple in the current. So this inductor has to be in series with the current. So let me place it here. So this is the inductor L, okay. Now we are fine now with the ripple that is there in the current, but there is a problem. There is a problem here. We know that one terminal of an inductor, one of the terminal, any of the terminal of the inductor, it cannot be connected to a terminal of a switch. Okay. So this is because what is the reason? Reason is that since when current is flowing through the inductor, so it is having storing energy, and if you are suddenly trying to remove this switch, open this switch, that means you are basically trying to cut the current. You are trying to force the current to 0. So that would lead to a very high dV by dt across the inductor, okay, and consequently that will also appear across the switch. So it may lead to failure of the switch, okay. So this is an undesirable situation. We have to think of some way to mitigate it. So the option, one of the options that is available to us is providing a path to the current which is being flowing through the inductor when switch is turned off. So how is that path provided? We add a diode here, okay. So what this diode is going to do? So when current is flowing, let me draw it with a different color. When this switch was closed and current was flowing like this, okay. So this is the direction of flow of current. The inductor was getting charged. Suddenly I removed, and since you could see here this is plus and this is minus, the higher potential, lower potential, and this point is same as this point, same potential. So definitely this diode is not going to conduct because its cathode is at lower potential than the anode. Its anode is basically at a lesser potential than the cathode. So it is not going to conduct in this situation. Okay. So this is situation 1. Situation 1 when the switch is on or closed. The second situation could be The second situation is when this switch is forced to turn off or it is open circuited. So now we have a current which is flowing through the inductor. Now current cannot flow in this path. So we do have an alternate path for the current to flow. So current will now take this path through the diode, and that is how we are ensuring that the problem of high dV by dt, which otherwise would have severely affected or even damaged the switch, we have avoided that situation with the help of this diode. Is it fine? One more thing, we have taken care of the current ripple by using this inductor. What about the voltage ripple? I told you that the load requirement do demand low voltage ripple across it. Okay, so we have to take care of the voltage ripple also, and we know again we do have a passive element to maintain the voltage almost constant, and that passive element is the capacitor. Okay, the property of the capacitor is to ensure that the voltage that is appearing across it is almost constant. So there is that it do not allow a sudden change of voltage across it. So how we have to place that capacitor? Definitely we have to place the capacitor in parallel to the load, so that the load voltage ripple is taken care of. So we will be using the capacitor now here. In parallel with the load. Okay, so I hope you do understand the importance of this inductor, this capacitor and the diode, why we are using it in this configuration of buck converter. Okay, so ideally buck converter will have only one switch which would be separating the DC supply and the load, but for real situation we have to reduce the ripples in the current as well as the voltage. Moreover, we have to provide the current path when it is flowing through the inductor. So these three components, the diode, inductor and capacitor, has to be added to the buck converter configuration to have a smooth operation. So finally we have this circuit, and this circuit, here it is the switch, this is the diode, this is the capacitor, this is the inductor, and this is the load. Now the switch that we are using here, as you could see here, that turning on and off of the switch should be in the control of the user. Then only we can ensure that it turns off and on whenever we want. So that means this switch has to be any one of the fully controlled device or fully controlled switch. What are the various fully controlled devices? We have power MOSFET, we have power BJT, we have power IGBT. There are certain addition to this list of power semiconductor devices recently, like your silicon carbide devices have come up, and they do have characteristics which are close to an ideal switch, but these are the more conventional switches that are normally employed in most of the converters, wherein turning on and off process has to be controlled by the user. Okay, so power MOSFET, power BJT, power IGBT, what is the difference between the three? So MOSFET is metal oxide, silicon, field effect transistor. BJT is bijunctional, bipolar junction transistor. IGBT is insulated gate bipolar transistor. So all three are transistors, but I won't be going again into the characteristic and device physics, but from electrical engineering point of view, please remember that MOSFET are fully controlled switches and they operate at very high frequency. Okay, the switching losses is quite low in MOSFET, so we can move up to a very high frequency operation. What is the advantage of high frequency operation? What are the disadvantages? We will discuss them in some other lecture. The power BJT. Power BJT has got a good conduction characteristic. That means the loss that is associated with a BJT when it is conducting is very low. Okay. Similarly, IGBT incorporates the good features of MOSFET and BJT, and it has now become quite popular, and it has replaced these two devices almost completely in industrial drives and industrial systems. Okay, so it operates at high frequency and it has got very low conduction loss. Is it fine? Okay, so this switch could be any of these three: power MOSFET, power BJT, or power IGBT. Now, so this is a basic introduction about the buck converter. I would be now analyzing this circuit exhaustively, and we would be interested in knowing about the various waveforms that are associated with a buck converter, the current and voltage waveforms. Please remember, when you are doing power electronics, when you are learning power electronics, waveforms are very important, the voltage and current waveforms. So we will be looking at those waveforms, and then we would be trying to find out a relation between the input and output voltage. We would also be trying to find out the ripple and its relation with the inductor and the capacitor, so that we can use it for design purpose. Okay, so we cannot randomly select L and C for any type of buck converter. We basically have to design it. You have to find the values of L and C for a particular ripple tolerance. Okay, say for example, for 5% voltage tolerance, we will have this much amount of capacitor that can be calculated from some formula which we would be deriving in our future lecture. Okay, so right now let me just try to derive the relation between input and output voltage. Okay, and then we will stop at that point, and rest of the analysis would be taken up in the next lecture. So in order to find out the relation between input and output, we would be using a concept of volt second balance. Volt second balance in inductor. This is one way or one method of trying to find out a relation between input and output, and you will see that it is quite a useful way of doing the analysis of a circuit. Okay. Similarly, there is another useful concept called the capacitor charge balancing. Capacitor charge balance. So these two concepts are quite useful whenever we are analyzing DC to DC converter circuits. Okay, you would be regularly invoking these two concepts for analyzing the circuits. So let us quickly see what exactly is this volt second balance in inductor and the capacitor charge balance in the inductor. Okay. So basically an inductor, so let's take first the volt second balance. This is an inductor. Okay, so let me give a polarity to it, direction of current to it, and let VL be the voltage that will be appearing when current IL is flowing through it. And we know that there is a relation which exists between VL and IL, and that is given by VL equals to L dIL by dt. Rate of change of the current through the inductor is proportional to the voltage appearing across the inductor. So if I try to bring this term here, so I would be left with VL dt equals to L di. Okay, so if I integrate it for one complete cycle, 0 to t, and here 0 to not 0 to I, actually when the current would be flowing through the inductor under steady state condition, and under continuous condition, the waveform of the current would be something like this. So it would be periodic. Okay, so it would be starting from some value I1 and it would be reaching a maximum value of I2, and then again it will be falling back. This is the situation when the switch is on, and this is the situation when switch is off. So when switch is on here, switch is on, the current through the inductor would be increasing. Why it would be a linear increase? And so I will come to that also. Then during the off period, the current would be decreasing through the inductor. Okay, I will come to why exactly is the waveform like this. Increasing doesn't mean that increase should be linear. It could be non-linear increase also, but we will see that actually it is the case. Linear increase and linear decrease of current is there across the inductor. But for the time being, just assume that this is the waveform, and I1 is